Over 850 competitors from 35 countries have gathered here on the Gold Coast for the third World Triathlon Championships, also acting as the second last race of this year's World Cup Series and worth double points. Competitors this morning will swim 1.5 kilometres, cycle another 40 and then finish the event with a 10-kilometre run to officially be known as the world's best. Well, Australia have come into this event on the tail of a spectacular showing at last year's World Championships in the USA, where we finished first, second and third in the men's event, took bronze in the women's elite team category and also took out the female and male junior divisions. Well, can we repeat that spectacular showing of 12 months ago? With me to help answer that is twice Hawaiian Ironman and now a board member of Triathlon Australia, Peter Beckerleg. It's a big ask, isn't it, Peter?
It certainly is, Karen, but we've assembled probably the strongest team Australia sent out to compete in the World Championship this year. All the boys are in really good shape and some of the women are really outstanding, their performances in the US earlier this summer. But the American...
Very fast times, especially on the bike leg, and even so much so that world best times are expected.
Well, in the swim, I'd like to be 30 seconds to a minute back and no more, and I'll be going as hard as I can and make sure I get that. And then in the bike ride, I'd like to get off at 30 seconds to 2 minutes ahead of everyone to start to run. And so I'll be going flat out to do that on the bike. And then the run, you just run scared and hope you can win the race.
While favouritism is centred on California Mike Pigg, close behind is Australia's golden boy this season, Brad Beven, and New Zealand's Rick Wells. Also from the US, Rob Mackle, the only American to place in the top 10 at last year's championships, while dark horse for the title is local 20-year-old Miles Stewart. In the women's section, defending champion Karen Smyers from the US has by far been the outstanding competitor of season 91.
I know that all year, even if I've been winning, it hasn't been by a whole lot. So I kind of know that it's going to be whoever's having a good day. And if I am a favorite, it's by like skin of my teeth.
Close on her tail, a strong Canadian contingent headed by last year's runner-up, Carol Montgomery.
It hurts all the way in these short course ones. It's a sprint, basically, and it's hard work and you're always feeling pain. You go through stages where it's not as bad and then it gets really bad and then it's not as bad, but you just sort of work through it and finish it.
Finally, not to be discounted on home soil, Aussie girls Michaeli Jones and Bianca von Woesik. Well, just a few seconds now before we get underway with these 1991 World Triathlon Championships. The women will start first, 15 minutes ahead of the men. Here they are.
3, 2, 1, we're underway. Let's give them some support.
And Peter, a pretty number at the start of the swim leg, but who could we expect out of these women?
I'm Canada, swimmer, but I'd also expect Carol Pickard from Australia to dominate the women's swim race, and I think she'll obviously be the first Aussie girl out.
Well, the swim leg here is 1.5 kilometres, as we've said. It takes in a triangular course, as we can see here. From the beach, heading up, it must complete 3 laps of the cycle course, adds up to 40 k's, taking them along Surfers Paradise, up the Esplanade through the transition area, then 2 laps of a 5-kilometre course, again through the transition zone in the middle part, takes them into the residential area of the Gold Coast and the finish line back in the transition area. And here the leader of the swim leg at this early stage.
This is a New Zealand girl, Anne Keat. Don't know much about this young lady at the moment. I noticed she's swimming without goggles, and we called that earlier a pretty rough swim start. I don't know whether that's a choice of hers or whether they may in fact have got knocked off, and she has developed a sizable lead over this elite field of females in the 1991 World Triathlon Championships.
What type of time should we be looking at for the women's? Around a 20-minute?
Yeah, I suspect they'll probably swim around 20 minutes. The conditions here today are absolutely outstanding for fast swim times. That water's flat, there's no crosswind to chop it up, and with the second pack, there's some substantial swimmers in that second pack. We mentioned earlier Karen Smyers, and the Australian girl Carol Pickard will probably be up there as well, and they'll pull the pack along at a fair rate.
Well, here's just a few of the other swimmers, still very early stages at the moment, but Anne Keat must be very happy that she's established what is a very handy lead.
Yeah, she'll it's hard to see anyone pulling that back. They've let her get away a little bit. The bike leg will certainly sort a few of these girls out, as it does with the men, but people like Jan Ripple and Carol Montgomery and Carol Smyers, who will be in that second pack of swimmers, we can see there, it's a substantial gap, but 3 laps on this bike over 40 kilometres, they'll peg her back. But this is a sizable gap to this young lady, and it's been a fine swim. This is the second pack of women there.
Yes, as we said, pretty early stages. Of course, you have to pace yourself. Handy to get that lead, but there's 40 or 50 k's to go after this. The men just about to get underway. Here they are on the beach, and we see a couple of them not wearing the wetsuits.
Yeah, it's an optional. It's an option under International Triathlon Union rules. Once the water's below 22 degrees, the elite field can choose to wear or not wear wetsuits. You have to be a fairly confident swimmer, confident in your own ability to take on these guys without wetsuits. I'd be surprised if the leader isn't wearing a wetsuit once they get settled down into this mass start.
Well, I suppose all eyes will be on another New Zealander, Rick Wells, to be taking an early lead here. He is an ex-Commonwealth Games representative for New Zealand. He swam at the 1982 Commonwealth Games in Brisbane in the 1 and 200 metre freestyle. And also he won last year at the Commonwealth Games in Auckland, the triathlon, which was a demonstration sport for the first time at the Commonwealth Games. So he'd be a pretty hard man to beat in the swim league.
Yeah, Rick Wells is an outstanding swimmer, and he's been an outstanding triathlete since he's burst onto the scene. He's never failed to perform in these big races with Rick Wells, and we see him there. That's Rick Wells, the undoubted style of him, and he's having a look over the shoulder just to see what the pack are going to do here. There's the second pack. That includes one of the Aussies, and that's Nick Croft. I was nicking a lot, a bit of a tussle in the back in the back. Not easy, not straight pill swimming this triathlon business. But look at that gap from Rick Wells.
It's almost a replica of the women's race, isn't it?
Certainly is. Rick Wells looking very strong, and that second pack's got a big job now, because Wells is an overall balanced triathlete, and as I said earlier, he hasn't failed to impress in any of the big races he's been in the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, Rick Wells does have an extra incentive today. The New Zealand government, the sports arm of their government body, has said that they will give the winner, if it is a New Zealander here at the World Championships, $25,000 in cash. I'd say that would come in handy.
Well, especially these time triathletes I saw around the world. And Rick Wells, I saw him in the bike compound this morning, and if he hasn't dropped 8 or 10 pounds since the last time I saw him in the States for this event, I'd be very surprised. He's looking very lean and obviously swimming very, very well this morning.
Now just coming to the end of the women's leg, and if that's still Anne Keat, well, she does have a very big lead there, so it probably is. Yes, there she comes, the New Zealander, Anne Keat.
It's a fine swim from Anne Keat. It's a fair gap back there. She's going to be into the transition and onto the bike before the bulk of that second pack get through the showers. Across the bridge down into the transition zone, and that's a decent lead from this New Zealand lass.
New Zealand dominating in both the men's and women's legs at the moment. And here's the rest of them coming out of the water.
That's
Joanne
Ritchie, the Canadian girl. That's a fine swim from her, and there goes Bianca van Woesik, the Aussie girl, up the ramp. So that's a fine, that looks like Gail Watson there going into the bike compound. Here's Anne Keat onto the bike. There, you'll see her wheeling her bike down here with the shoes attached. They have a zone at the end of this bike compound where they must mount and dismount the bike for safety reasons primarily, but also to give equal, to make the whole race fair, so that some people aren't getting on their bike earlier than others and getting the momentum. But Anne Keat showing a nice break here out of the swim.
And ahead of Anne Keat, 40 kilometres on the cycle leg. And of course, transitions, the way in which you change and the time in which you change from one leg to the other, very important.
I can make or break a race in these sprint triathlons. Even in distances like the Hawaiian Ironman triathlon, it could win or lose a race in respect of your transition times. But
Anne Keat, 29 years old. A big lead going into the first lap of this 40k cycle leg. And here's some more of the Aussies, a big bunch.
Yeah, the Spanish girl Garcia up there at the start of that with Carol Pickard in that bunch going out. There's Joanne Ritchie and Carol Montgomery, the two Canadian girls who were expecting to do substantially well in this event. And onto the bikes, Bianca van Woesik there, she's right up with them as well. That's the Aussie girl you just saw with the black disc wheel and the rainbow stripes.
And Joanne Ritchie, she's not on our screen now, but she was losing a bit of time getting onto the bike.
Yeah, it seems she just lost her balance a little as the other girls got on fairly quickly. We cut to the women's leader here. It's Anne Keat from New Zealand. Beautiful action on this young lady as a cyclist. The surprise leader from my point of view anyway. Maybe the New Zealanders aren't so surprised, but I would have expected Karen Smyers and probably Carol Montgomery to be pressing for the lead by about now in the bike race.
Further back in the bunch now.
It's the Spanish girl there, young Garcia. And this is Carol Pickard from Western Australia, just back in the sport now after a couple of years out, or 18 months out with injury.
And as the women progress on the cycle leg, we're back to the men's swim now. And that little white splash of water you can see to the left-hand side of your screen near the turning buoy is Rick Wells from New Zealand, and he really has opened up a substantial lead.
That gap seems to have got a little bigger since the last time we saw the men's swim. And I'm quite surprised that the pack have let him get away that far, because he is a good cyclist and a good runner. But that lead pack, it would be interesting to know who's in that second bunch as they Rick Wells down the longest part of his course towards the last of the turning buoys.
Yes, and really little separates the following swimmers on Rick Wells' tail.
It's difficult to pick up who it is, but in that leading pack there would be, they'd have an eye on each other. They'd know exactly who's where, and they'll be looking for not letting anyone else get away from them.
And here are the junior men and women starting for their chance in the World Championships, 10 minutes behind the men. So the elite men started 15 minutes behind the elite women, and the juniors 10 minutes further back. So 25 minutes after the beginning of morning.
Yeah, it's fairly much an unknown quantity, most of the juniors, but of course this team the junior measures and championships.
Join Rick Wells, New Zealand, on the last leg.
What a fine style from Rick Wells. Any prominent swim coach would be proud of that. Nice high arm action and a big kick from the ex-Commonwealth Games swimmer. And he heads down now with not that much further to go. And that's a big gap from that aerial shot. It's a big gap back to the field, and here he is, head onto the beach now. It's hard to pick what the lead is. We'll probably get time on him out of the water. But this field's spread right back now in the elite male division, and they're all chasing this New Zealander, Rick Wells.
30 years of age, and he must be pretty happy with his position at the moment.
Rick Wells is the sort of swimmer that would be unhappy if he was a number one out. He has won more triathlon swims than I can remember. He's normally the first 1 or 2 out, and has been an outstanding competitor on the world circuit for 3 or 4 years. Look, just where they are, and he's probably trying to fact who is in their pack so that he can assess what he has to do on the bike. Here's the second man out. This is the Australian team captain, young Nick Croft. Brisbane-based triathlete, Rick Wells from New Zealand.
Australia in a pretty handy position with Nick Croft second so far in the men's, and there was quite a big bunch of Aussie girls heading off into that cycle leg too.
Yeah, big bunch of the Aussie girls there together. And here comes the main pack of the men out now. A little hard to pick them up with goggles and helmets on. Here's Rick Wells on with the helmet.
And a big bunch now making their way up into the transition zone. But Rick Wells off first.
He's not no slouch on the bike, Rick Wells. He's going to give these people a fair run for their money in this race. He's obviously New Zealand's number one hope, and $25,000 carrot at the end of the day is really going to make Rick Wells.
And interesting to note, the shoes already buttoned onto the pedals, all to save time.
All to view, the transfer of power through the pedal on clipless pedals is substantial. Out goes Nick, Australian team captain, and immediately behind him was Rob Mackle. Rob Mackle there with the white tri-spoke on the front. It's his second foot in.
And Nick Croft, his swimming coach anyway, is Ian Finlay up in Queensland, the coach of swimmers like Julie McDonald and also Glenn Houseman.
It was at one of Nick's training sessions a couple of weeks back, and he's swimming with those people now in that squad, so he's got it together. Here's Rick Wells.
And split times we've just been handed for the elite male swim. Rick Wells from New Zealand, 18 minutes and 48 seconds. Nick Croft in second place from Australia with 19 minutes and 2 seconds. And just 8 seconds further back, Rob Mackle from the USA.
Yeah, they're excellent swim times, just about on target for 1,500-metre open water swim. A stunning shot there of the Broadwater here at the Gold Coast. And Wells. Right forward on the seat, as you can see. Not the classic cycling action most people would be used to, but a beautiful time trial action. Sitting on the profile bars, cutting down as much of the wind resistance as he can as he powers along at the front of the 1991 World Championships Elite Male Division.
Beautiful aerial shot there as we return to the women. And is that Bianca von Woesik?
Certainly is. It's been a great bike ride from Bianca von Woesik. She's obviously had a good swim this morning. This bike leg is her strongest leg, and she'd be looking, I would expect, to get the biggest gap she can.
Well, she's obviously had a very fast transition time, which is of the essence, as defending champion Karen Smyers knows all too well.
Last year, I won the World Championships by 14 seconds, and I beat Carol Montgomery by 13 seconds just in transitions. So it can mean a lot. It makes you nervous because sometimes it's one of those things, if you try too hard to be fast, you start to fumble, you know, so you just have to, kind of be relaxed but fast.
Well, Bianca von Woesik is certainly fast at the moment, but how relaxed do you think she'd be, Peter?
Well, she'd be trying to get the biggest break, as we said earlier, because her run leg isn't as strong as some of the other girls, but she is a very good cyclist, and she's starting to really pull away from this field. There's a fair gap in there, and I think Karen Smyers and Ritchie was in that pack, which is interesting, and Carol Montgomery will be starting to look for just how far this young Australian girl is going to get away.
And interesting to note too that for most of these athletes, this course of just over 60 kilometres is a sprint course.
Yeah, the Olympic distance course is, they pound around here, the women in a touch over 2 hours, and the men will probably go 1:46 or 1:48 today. And yeah, it's way to go. It's a little bit like, I suppose, what athletics do with the 800 metres. It's not quite the sprint, and it's certainly not quite the distance and tactics race of the 1500. It's just start to finish, you know, give it everything you've got, and at the end of the day we'll see, I'm sure, both the men and the women will be just totally spent after around 2 hours of exertion at this elite level of competition.
Well, unlike some of her Australian teammates, Bianca von Woesik has religiously been training on this course up on the Gold Coast for the last 6 months. She's opted not to go overseas and compete and train over in America, for instance, like someone like Michaela Jones has done. But she's relatively new to the sport, only 2 years in the game.
Yeah, she is new. She's got a great attitude, has Bianca, and certainly training here on the Gold Coast, and that roar from the crowd certainly would be a great feeling for any Aussie coming through here in the transition area, but certainly paying dividends right now, having stayed home and raced through, or trained through the, if you could call it a Queensland winter, an exceptional winter in Queensland this year, and Bianca von Woosik's got the whole crowd behind her.
Well, it's been a great turnout today, hasn't it?
I've been in triathlon a long time, and I am surprised and pleasantly surprised at the number of people that have come out to watch the World Championships, and we can see from our vantage point the people lining the road just don't finish here at the transition area, and the shots from the helicopter will show people that, you know, the Gold Coast people have come out in force to support this race, and, you know, we're very appreciative of them for the support they give triathlon.
And 28-year-old Australian Bianca von Woesik, a surprise leader at the moment at the start of this cycle leg.
An excellent shot there of the benefits of the profile bars that are used by all the elite triathletes now. Nice straight up and down leg action from Bianca as she powers at the front of this elite women's field. The chase is on though. Karen Smyers is there, so too Ritchie, and is the other Canadian girl, Carol Montgomery.
A long way to go for the women yet in this Triathlon Championships as we pick up the action at the end of the swim leg for the juniors, and Spencer Smith from Great Britain out of the water first.
And hot on his heels is the young 16-year-old Queenslander Ben Bright. We thought he'd dominate a little bit in this race. He's, interestingly, 16 years of age, is the current Queensland long course triathlon champion.
And back to the men, and Rick Wells from New Zealand still in the lead.
Hasn't dropped his action at all, or his cadence. He's travelling along nicely, Rick Wells. And there's going to be a few boys back in the bunch wondering just how far Wells is going to get ahead. We saw him fine swim this morning, and he's really got it motoring along there. That's the flat part of the course along the front of the beach there, you can see. And that's a big gap.
Well, you can't even see who's behind him yet, can you?
That is a big gap. Rick Wells obviously leading this race, and here comes Mike Pigg.
And Mike Pigg is one fellow that we'd assume would dominate in this leg because he's an awesome cyclist.
Awesome, yeah, that's the appropriate word. He's always been known as a great cyclist, but you can see here that the pack of, or the chasing pack of riders really aren't letting Pigg get away. They're working off his pace, which is legal, and they're probably just waiting for Mike Pigg to make the move and lead them through. There goes Nick Croft, there's Miles Stewart. That was Rob Mackle as well, scooting around that corner, and here's the women's leader.
And Bianca von Woesik still in the lead for Australia.
It won't surprise me to see Bianca still in the lead at the end of 40 kilometres, but boy, there's some nice cyclists behind her, and we talk, of course, of the reigning world champion, and the girls from Canada, Joanne Ritchie and Carol Montgomery, are still in the chase.
Well, Bianca came third in the World Cup Series race held here in April, and she'll be looking to go, well, 2 steps better than that today because she's up against the same competition she was in the World Cup.
There she is, and here's the world champion, well, the reigning world champion, Karen Smyers. She's on the chase to Bianca von Woesik, and she's pushing a big gear there. She's really got the leg speed up, and she doesn't want this young girl from Australia to get too far ahead, and she's leading the chasing bunch of elite women.
Well, since
yeah, she goes past. This is one of the French team. Stunning outfits on this French team this year. They were really spectacular.
Well, certainly one thing about this sport is the colours of it.
I think it's done wonders for the clothing industry over the last couple of years. And here's Nick Croft, the Australian team captain. And speaking of colours, Nick looks like he's had his tri-spoke and his bike painted so that we can clearly see he's an Australian, matching the Australian uniform.
Makes Andre Agassi look dull, doesn't it? And Rob Mackle from the USA.
Yeah, the highest finisher last year in the World Championships, representing the USA, Rob Mackle, a fine cyclist. A little bit like Mike Pigg, he likes to get on the front and lead all the time on the bike, and he's part of this pursuing pack that are chasing down the New Zealander Rick Wells.
And one incentive for the US competitors would be to get a good result in this Triathlon Championships because last year it was Aussies 1, 2, 3 on their home soil.
Yes, the Australians, as we mentioned earlier, haven't been beaten in teams competition for 2 years of Triathlon Championships. And here we see on the front, here's that's Miles Stewart on the right and Mike Pigg on the left as they go into this corner.
And as we said, this course is flat and fast, but what does Mike Pigg think about it?
I prefer to have a big old hill in the middle of the course because then everyone's doing their own work. This course is a really tight course, and there's going to be some people that can sit behind other people legally and have a pretty easy ride. So while I'm out there busting my butt up in front, there'll be some good runners just hoping they can get off the bike and catch me on the run.
Well, that's an interesting part of the cycle leg, isn't it?
Yeah, Mike Pigg's strength is that ability to ride over the top of hills, but he's got some people here that aren't really going to let him get away, and you can see that everyone's really... See Miles Stewart there, moves across the road just to cover where Pigg's going. He's Harold Robinson right there. That's an interesting move. Harold Robinson's come right up through the field to sit in 4th position, and he's a fairly powerful runner, Harold Robinson, so the boys will be watching each other now, but Rick Wells has got this field covered, as you can see. That's Mike Pigg behind him on that yellow framed bike, and obscured, well, here's Mike Pigg ducking on the inside here under Rick Wells. Rick Wells hasn't, there he goes. Rick Wells has suddenly realised and doesn't want Pigg to get away. In this tight part of the course, Mike Pigg would be trying to grab as much of a gap as he could. If these three can stay with Pigg on the bike, we're really in for an interesting running race because much of a muchness when it comes to the ability of these 4 people as runners. There isn't the dominant runner in these 4 that, say, Mark Allen would be, had Mark Allen have raced. So I would think that, people like Miles and Rick Wells would be saying, well, let's hold on to Pigg and just see if we can cover him and let's pull it down to the run.
Miles Stewart taking 2nd position at the moment.
Yeah, Miles seems to be concentrating on exactly what Pigg's doing. Whether this is a tactic preconceived by his coach, Colin, or not, or whether he's just feeling okay and decides that he's going to take on the leading triathlete in the world today. But might Pigg be thinking about this Miles Stewart character. He's had a lot of ups and downs in his triathlon career.
Well, we saw Rick Wells just then surrender his lead, but this lady, Bianca von Woesik, certainly isn't from Australia. She'll be hoping to consolidate her lead on the bike as it's her strongest leg.
Yeah, well, the bike is actually my best leg, so I'll be looking for put in a really good bike leg and maybe making a bit of a break on that and trying to hold them off in the run.
Well, holding them off on the run. Her run leg, she has said previously, is her weakest link. How do you think she'll go today?
Well, she'll need to have a fair gap on some of these women, although having a look at Karen Smyers seems just to be struggling a little bit here. She's pushing a gear that's a bit bigger than most of the other girls, or that we've seen so far, and going past her now, Michaela Jones from Australia. That's a good bike ride from Michaela too. She's a fine runner, and she'll be pretty proud of herself motoring past the reigning world champion at the moment as they go through Surfers Paradise. But Bianca's going to need a bit of a buffer. There's some good runners. The Canadian girls, especially Carol Montgomery, beaten 14 seconds last year in the World Championships, and she'll be out to try and mow down. Back to the men now. Of course, this is Mike Pigg. Out the front, on the right of him is Harold Robinson, another US teammate, and smack in the middle of those two, covering them, is Miles Stewart. At this point, a good placing here at the World Championships, and in that pack as well, of course, Rick Wells. There's Rick.
And he's not giving up by the look on his face.
Rick Wells doesn't give up. He's been around this scene as a real professional for too many years, and we did mention earlier that he's never failed to produce in the big races, Rick Wells. He's won the first World Sprint Championship in Perth, and he's raced in America and Europe and had some fine performances. And still that right through. This is Rob Mackle, another one of the US team members.
And as the riders approach the halfway point of this cycle leg, around 20 kilometres, it's interesting that in a lot of sports, when you reach your late 20s, early 30s, you're almost on line for retirement, but it's almost the prime time for triathlon competitors.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the attractions of the sport. It's a general rule, but this young man here is proving the exception to the rule today. This is 20-year-old Miles Stewart, and he is absolutely having a blinder of a race. He's had a great swim, and he's paralleling on there beautifully on the bike.
And another Australian,
Bianca would now be aware of the fact that she has substantially closed that gap over this second lap of the female bike race. But as they come through into this transition area, as has happened the last couple of times, the thunderous roar of the spectators here will help Bianca, and I would suggest she'll probably come out just a little bit quicker than she's gone in. The adrenaline will be pumping now. She's in front of her home crowd. She's trained on this course religiously, as you pointed out earlier, for the last 6 months, and she knows the road.
Well, as in a lot of endurance sports, this is much a mental thing as with physical fitness, and it would be a big psychological boost to have this lead at the moment.
Oh, the lead for Bianca is substantial in respect of, we heard her say earlier, she is a little less proficient in the run than some of the other girls, and she needs as much of a gap as she can get. But there goes Carol Montgomery through now. She's in third position, another one of the Canadians, and she's a fine runner, Carol Montgomery, runner-up last year, of course, in the World Championships. Gap closed a little bit, or maybe in fairness, she's managed to bridge the gap. But out they go. Joanne Ritchie crosses to the inside.
And how is Joanne Ritchie on the run leg? Have you seen much of her in competition?
I haven't seen much of her this season, but I have read a bit. She's an equal runner with Carol Montgomery, and not quite to the Karen Smyers level, but Karen Smyers has got to get there yet, and it's going to be a big ask from Karen Smyers right now, because she's a fair way back.
And there's the pack now. Karen Smyers just on the tail of it, rounding the bend now.
With a couple of the Aussie girls there dominating in that bunch as well, Michaela Jones, and looks in fine position. She's a great runner, Michaela Jones, and ranked #1 in Australia at this point, and she could be a threat in this event from that position on the bike. But Bianca von Woesik certainly got her work cut out for her now with Joanne Ritchie right at the front of the pack, and you can see from there the gap as, in fact, the two leading females have moved away. And as just under 13 kilometres to go now in the elite female division, we see Bianca von Woesik as they head down the Pacific Highway, just holding off Joanne Ritchie from Canada. this is going to come down to the run leg now between these two powerful cyclists in the championship.
And another Australian powering in the lead in the junior division, Ben Bright, 16 years of age. So a good day for Australia all round at the moment.
Oh, at the top end of the field, they're certainly doing very well. This young man's a dominant cyclist. He does very, very well on the bike. But here we are back with the women's field, and Joanne Ritchie's gone past Bianca van Woesik now, and looking very comfortable, probably looking as comfortable as we've seen any of the elite riders all day today. Down nice and low with a beautiful leg action, and she's really powering along the Pacific Highway here. The barricades there on the right, this is part of the course that hosts the IndyCar Grand Prix, and as you can see, Bianca's moved out to the middle of the road to try and keep out of the draft.
And in the men's section, it's Mike Pigg.
Absolutely, Mike Pigg. On his right-hand side was Harold Robinson. Through there, we just saw the Australian colours of Miles Stewart, and that there then was Rick Wells from New Zealand. So, as we predicted, Rick Wells is still in there. They're not going to shake this New Zealand man off, and Miles Stewart, he is having an absolutely perfect event. He swum very well, and his cycling is outstanding today.
As the men approach the transition zone once again to complete lap 2 of this cycle leg, only one to go. That's around 13 k's in length. And I suppose, Peter, now is a time that if one wants to make a break, they should try and do it now.
Yes, there's 4 of them in contention for the lead off the bike, and going through the transition area, there's the opportunity to get away with the congestion that may be in there, and some better bike skills might see it. And looks like there's Harold Robinson there on the front of the pack now, and Rick Wells trying to go along the same line. Through there, you can just see Mike Pigg, but Harold Robinson goes in first, USA competitor, and he'll be trying to avoid as much of the congestion and maybe get a break, and he has a good look to see where they are.
Yes, a glance over the shoulder, and on his tail he'll see Rick Wells from New Zealand and Mike Pigg just on the inside, and Miles Stewart not far behind them.
Miles isn't letting them get away in here, and this is the tactics of the race now. None of these lead 4 can afford to let anybody get a break, because it's going to come down to the run race when they get 13 kilometres after this bike. And Harold Robinson on the front, taking a nice wide line, try and get the best line out onto that Pacific Highway. And
well, he's got some pretty good cyclists behind him. 13 k's to go on this last leg. Can he hold out?
Well, Harold Robinson's been around for a fair while, and he's a very competent cyclist. Mike Pigg is the informed cyclist of the year on the American circuit, and certainly, as we've said all day, the man to beat here. But it certainly looks like it's going to come to the run. It's only 13 kilometres, and the calibre of Rick Wells and Miles Stewart won't let any major break happen now, not even from the awesome Mike Pigg.
A bit of a fall here, I suppose, one of the occupational hazards of triathlon competition.
One of the contributing factors to this, of course, is that all these competitors we see here are the age groupers coming through who started in wave starts after the elite race. And here we switch back to the beautiful cycling action of Mike Pigg. He's on the front of the chasing bunch now. Harold Robinson's made a substantial breakaway. Pigg has a look over, crosses the road, and he's got Rick Wells there in the blue shoes, you can just see. And on the outside of Wells is Miles Stewart. And they're now the chasing bunch. Harold Robinson from the US has really started to pull away from this main field, and he's going to need a bigger gap probably than any of these 3 if he wants to run away from these people. He's not quite the runner that these people are, and you can tell a little bit that he's a big tall man, and he's going to have his work cut out.
And in the women's section, Joanne Ritchie from Canada has, well, she's overtaken Bianca van Woesik a little while back, but it looks like she's got a pretty handy lead as well.
Well, she looks no different now than when she looked the last time we saw her. She's very comfortable, and there's Bianca. She's
got her head down.
Yeah,
she doesn't look as comfortable as Joanne.
She's looking a little uncomfortable there. She seems to be, if you see the movement in her upper body, movement in her shoulders. As we watched Joanne go past, she was dead still on that bike, and it shows total control and a little bit of experience from Joanne Ritchie. And this is really going to take come down to the running race now between the men and the women by the look of it.
And Harold Robinson still in the lead from the United States in the men's section. And these cyclists are going fast, around, well, over 40 k's. I know in the World Cup in April, Mike Pigg was clocked at going over 65 kilometres an hour.
And that's why he gets the name Awesome. He does it regularly. Here they are into the transition area now, the lead women. Joanne Ritchie from Canada scoots in first, stops at that dotted line we explained earlier.
The question is, who's got the fastest speed to get out on the run leg first?
Where's the transition time? And here's where we'll start to see races of this distance won and lost. There's Bianca van Woesik.
There's nothing much in it between the Canadian and Australian girl.
And Bianca just getting into her running shoes there. And Joanne Ritchie will be concentrating on what she's doing. Karen Smyers pointed out before, you can go slower by trying to go faster.
Where do I go, she asks. Up the ramp.
Up the ramp and just pipped as they go out onto the run by Joanne Ritchie.
And I'm sure a good crowd reception here for both girls, but a bigger boost, I suppose, for the local one.
Well, yeah, the Australian spirit of barracking for the hometown girl will be strong, but they all like to see a great race, the Australians, and you can hear that crowd. It's absolutely stunning. Out goes Joanne Ritchie, and on her shoulder is Bianca Van Woesik.
And 10 kilometres to go.
Just
to the finish
10.
of this race for the women, so it's nearly there.
Just 10 to be crowned the world champion, and Bianca looks not quite as comfortable as Joanne there. And here we go. Now that's
Bianca refuses to take some water. That's surprising.
That is interesting. Hopefully she's had enough on the bike to keep it up, but she obviously doesn't want Joanne Ritchie to get away in the early part of the run.
So at the moment, Canada 1, Australia 2, as we pick up the third position at the moment. Another Canadian, 25-year-old Carol Montgomery, runner-up at last year's World Championships in Orlando, Florida. And so far this year, the only person to beat Karen Smyers. And a split time for Joanne Ritchie from Canada for the bike leg, 1 hour, 2 minutes and 9 seconds. But out of the transition zone, Bianca Van Woesik just 2 seconds behind.
Yeah, fine bike ride from both these ladies up the front. In balance, I suppose, the Canadians would have the strength in the run here. Joanne Ritchie's out the front and Carol Montgomery chasing. Carol Montgomery, as you said, the only lady to beat Karen Smyers this year. And it's really come to the run race now between the women. Here we are back with the men.
And Rick Wells from New Zealand at the head of your screen.
And that there is Rob Mackle. So he's back, and right on the outside of him, you can just see it in that lemon-coloured bike, is Mike Pigg. And we're at the lead part of the men's race now as they come round the corner. That's Howard Robinson on the front. Miles Stewart out of your picture now on the left.
So the Americans are really determined to get this elite men's title.
Yeah, they're going at it the right way too. They've got 3 men in the top 4 on the bike. Mike Pigg there just having a look down at his equipment. Seems to be sitting back a little bit, maybe hoping that someone else is going to do some work up the front. I think he's realised this is... Oh, interesting, Miles Stewart there just stood up in the pedals and thought, where's Mike Pigg? We've called it before, he has covered Mike Pigg's move all day today. And obviously they still think Pigg's the man to beat. And it's going to come down to the run league. Well, 3 or 4 of them into the transition zone, and this race may just be decided, as Karen Smyers said, in the men's transition.
And out of the transition, Mike Pigg regarded as the fastest in the world.
Pigg never ceases to stun people with how quick he is, but you know, this young man, he's going to be the hero of Australia. He's 20 years old, it's Miles Stewart, and he is just motoring along with 3 of the best recognised triathletes in the world, proudly displaying the Australian colours. Back behind him, Mike Pigg, the man who is accredited as #1. Mike Pigg there undoing his shoes, ready for the transition, so coming across the bridge. This is one of the reasons he's the fastest in the world. And back there behind him is Rob Mackle.
And he's looking fairly comfortable there.
Mike Pigg looks like he's made to sit on a bike. He's always been the same since he came into the sport. He's just been awesome. Here's Rick Wells on the front again. Howard Robinson immediately behind him. That's Howard Robinson there. Big, tall American. Miles Stewart. Just having a look again to see where Mike Pigg is. And,
well, there's just going to be nothing in it when they get on the run.
Well, it certainly seems that way, because we know where this is on the course, and no one's going to get a break. And Pigg's obviously just thinking, well, what am I going to do? Well, they're probably all of them, 4 of them there, thinking, what am I going to do here? It's going to be a run race. 10 kilometres they're going to pound around Surfers Paradise for. And some of the age group is still going out. Miles Stewart just slipped to the lead here as we come into the transition zone, and Rick Wells is going to let him get away. Even a couple of metres here could be absolutely critical if it's going to be that close. Miles having a look around and picks the good line. So it's Miles Stewart, Rick Wells, as they go into the transition zone for the last time. Howard Robinson behind him, then Mike Pigg, and then Rob Mackle. And in they come.
And listen to the cheer for the local boy, Miles Stewart, and he is a local boy from the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast boy. All the athletes love him. A bit of a clash with the Fisherton last year and was pulled from the Australian team, but he's vindicated his spot this year. First off the bike, and at the moment leading the World Triathlon Championship. And behind him, number one recognised. There's Rick Wells from New Zealand. And there goes Mike Pigg. Oh, what a flash change. Fourth off the bike, first out onto the run. And indicates everything. There goes Smyers. Yeah, in comparison to Bianca refusing that fluid at the first stage. Miles pulls the cap off, and there's Pigg right on his hammer. And there's Rick Wells again.
And taking the lead, Mike Pigg.
Through this timing chicane. Rick Wells not failing to produce again, and we have got a running race on our hands.
So 10 kilometres to go. We've got Mike Pigg from the USA in front, not far behind Miles Stewart, the young Australian, and Rick Wells, the 30-year-old New Zealander. And of course, we must remember he's got that $25,000 incentive, so he could produce anything in this run.
Right at this moment, these three men the money wouldn't be even in Rick Wells' mind today. He wants to be world champion. The kudos of being the world champion would far outweigh anything that they're thinking about. There's Harold Robinson. Now that's an interesting move. Harold Robinson, not renowned as a runner in this class, but doing very, very well today.
And
he's right up there.
And after the bike leg, Mike Pigg from the USA, a time of 55 minutes and 11 seconds. Miles Stewart, 55.25. Rick Wells, 55 minutes 59, just under the 56-minute mark. And Harold Robinson, 55.29.
Surprising, Mike Pigg's had the fastest bike ride, but that's what we would expect from this man. Miles Stewart just goes past him, probably just thinking, well, I'll let Pigg know I'm here. Mike has a look around and says, well, where are the others? And going to settle into a big race here between these four men, and it's going to be an interesting afternoon.
To the women's run race now, and Joanne Ritchie still in the lead. She established that when she passed Bianca von Woesik in the cycle leg, and she hasn't looked back from then.
Oh, Bianca, this water could become a problem. We've seen here Joanne Ritchie's drunk 3 or 4 huge gulps of water through that aid station, and look at that, Bianca's just taken the smallest sip and no refreshment from the sponges. I certainly hope she's got control of this. It's a warm day here, and fluid is absolutely essential to athletes in these conditions. As they come up this climb, Joanne Ritchie really looking a bit more comfortable than Bianca at this point. It's only early though, and we've certainly got a running race on our hands in the women's event as well as in the men's.
But Australians still featuring in a lot of the categories here today. Bianca von Woesik second in the women's. We have Miles Stewart, who is second in the men's, or had just taken the lead. And also Ben Bright in the juniors doing very well this afternoon. Ben's
still up there, and don't forget some of the women a bit further back. We've still got Michaela Jones in fine form. She's in the top 10, as is Louise Bonham. And here we are about 2 kilometres into the men's run now, and these 4 men striving to be the world triathlon champion after 10 kilometres at today's event.
Yeah, it is a great shot. You could throw a blanket over the leading bunch at the moment. One of those men, just on Mike Pigg's tail, is Rick Wells from New Zealand. Very strong. He led the swim, and you'd think that swimming might be his favourite leg, but not so.
No, probably the runners, because then you've got the bike ride out of the way, and that's the one where punches or crashes can happen. So that's where you're relying on sort of a mechanical type thing. And so once you hit the run, it's just down to what's in your legs and what's in your heart, and so I like that too, because then it means it's just head down and go for it.
Or you might have a lot in your heart at the moment, but I'd say a few of those athletes' legs must be feeling like jelly.
Yeah, they certainly will. Although these people have trained specifically for this event, and the specificity of training from triathlon is what carries all these athletes through, both the men and the women. But no truer word was said from Rick Wells, and he's got one of the biggest hearts in the sport.
And he's taken the lead.
Yeah, he's not going to be shy in coming forward, Rick Wells. We've seen that all through today.
And while there's nothing much in it in the men's event, in the women's, this woman, Joanne Ritchie, has taken a substantial lead. Michaela Jones from Australia.
It's been a fine run for Michaela. She's moved up through the field well off the bike. And this is Isabelle Mouthon from France, taking out the top part of the elite women's field. Fine aerial shot there of the course as they head around. And here's the men at the top marker point, the halfway point of the first part of the run. And they're all looking pretty comfortable there. They don't seem to be out for a Sunday morning jog. Miles Stewart just sitting on the back.
7.5 kilometres to go to decide the world men's champion. Rick Wells from New Zealand in the lead. On his tail, Mike Pigg from the USA. Harold Robinson.
Yep.
And Miles Stewart not far behind.
Just all there together. If one of them came down, they'd all end up down. But they'll be looking for each other to get a block off the wind and pace.
And the women now approaching the transition area to complete their first lap, 5 kilometres of the run leg. They've got 5Ks to go, and it's Joanne Ritchie from Canada, number 34, making her way back through first.
And Bianca Van Woesik just behind her was out of shot as we came in, but Bianca's holding on to second place. But we can see that gap is much more substantial than it was when they went out this morning.
Well, we heard Rick Wells saying, putting your head down and going for it in the run, and that's certainly what Joanne Ritchie's doing.
There'll be nothing in Joanne Ritchie's mind except the rhythm of her arms and her body as she strives to be the world champion. And here's Bianca Van Woesik. She's giving it her all as she gives the high five to some of the other Australians as they go out on the run.
Well, it's been a terrific performance by this lady today.
Dominated in the bike. She did very, very well. Came from back in the swim. She just failed to win the bike race, but she's held on to this much more seasoned competitor. 2 or 3 years in sport, young Bianca, and this lady, Joanne Ritchie's been around a lot longer than that, a lot of experience.
And the crowd's really cheering them on now as they enter the final leg, the run leg of these World Triathlon Championships. Bianca von Woesik.
Not looking all that comfortable there, Bianca, as she goes out. See, she's carrying her shoulders very tight, her arms are high. The rhythm isn't what you'd expect of someone who's going to be able to carry on this sort of pace.
But the light is coming at the end of the tunnel for the women, whereas for the men, they're not far behind as they come back into the transition zone, and it's Mike Pigg from the USA, Harold Robinson right on his tail with Rick Wells in third position, and Miles Stewart in fourth.
Just coming in. Boy, Mike Pigg's looking very comfortable here, but have a look at the stride on Miles Stewart. He's not breathing very hard as yet. Nice shoulder action, nice arm action. Rick Wells seems to be struggling just a touch, but Mike Pigg, he's out the front and they've got to get past him. He's a fine runner, great triathlete, but 5 kilometres to go. What are these guys going to do? There's Karen Smyers there, just going past the reigning world champion, and I would suggest that Karen Smyers is out of contention to regain her world championship crown. But the 4 men who are going to make this a running race are off with just 5 kilometres to run, and they're all looking very, very good.
So it's Mike Pigg, USA, followed by Harold Robinson, Rick Wells from New Zealand, and 20-year-old Miles Stewart from Australia.
Looking very comfortable is Miles Stewart. But can't take it away from the rest of these guys. He still has to get round them, and Pigg must have the psychological advantage at this point. He is the world #1. He has been absolutely dominant this summer on the US circuit. But out they go, but very impressive, the stride length on Miles Stewart.
And Joanne Ritchie from Canada still leading the women's section.
Even by a little more, by the look of that shot. She's starting to put a bit of a gap into Bianca.
And that luminous triangle marks the halfway point of each leg. That means 2.5 kilometres to go to decide the women's World Triathlon Champion. And she's looking pretty good, Joanne Ritchie from Canada.
They're very comfortable here as she comes up the hill. Here's a big psychological advantage for her. She'll know exactly where everybody is as she runs back on this field as a couple of the age group males start to loom on her from here. She gives a little wave. That's her teammate, Terry Smith-Ross, going through, who's taken over from second place from Bianca Van Woesik. And that looks like Michaela Jones just going past as well, going the other way. So Michaela's moved up into 4th place. And that's what we said earlier. Michaela's a fine runner. But here's the lady who's dominating this race now. This is Joanne Ritchie from Canada.
And back in the men's, Mike Pigg from the USA, there's nothing in it. Rick Wells from New Zealand just on his right shoulder. Behind him, Harold Robinson and Miles Stewart with the pink luminous cap.
I would have thought at this part of the course that, probably Pigg or maybe Miles Stewart would have tried to break this bunch up on this small rise, but no one's getting an inch here. And, these guys are coming up with 2 or 3 kilometres to run, and it's really going to come down to the very end of the day and who's got enough left in the legs. I don't think it's a bit like the bike race. We expected Pigg to break away in both of these, and these people have just covered him all day. Miles Stewart and Rick Wells especially. Wells has been there since they let the gun go this morning. He dominated the swim, never dropped back in the bike, and Miles Stewart just has been hanging in there.
2.5 kilometres to go now in the men's race. Mike Pigg from the USA in the lead. Rick Wells from New Zealand just on his tail. There's nothing in it in this men's event. They're back in the women's. Joanne Ritchie from Canada. Well, she does have a substantial lead. She should take the crown this year.
It appears that way. Canada first. Joanne Ritchie running very well here. She leads into the last little bit of the race, and coming through in 2nd place, another Canadian. This is Terry Smith-Ross. She's run very well today, Terry Smith-Ross. This is Joanne Ritchie at the last drink station. She thinks she probably doesn't need another drink. And off she goes to... And coming through third place, this is Michaela Jones. A fine run from this young lady. Michaela Jones has run herself into third place and not that far to go. So we may have a girl, an Australian girl, in the top 3, which will be a great effort.
And Isabelle Muffon from France.
She's in 4th place. And she's done very well today too. She's really held it together on the bike. She hasn't been much further back than 4th or 5th.
Carol Montgomery from Canada and also Bianca von Woesik still hanging in there.
And that's the operative word too. She's just hanging in there, not looking very well at all, is Bianca. But here's a lady who's looking pretty well. Not a sign of, not much strain on her face. Nice, comfortable action. Because she knows in a couple of minutes' time, she'll be the world champion over the Olympic distance for 1991. From Canada, Joanne Ritchie.
And just getting directed there into the final leg now. There's not much time to go for this lady.
Been an outstanding performance. She's been with the lead pack since the swim. Took the lead in the bike ride with a little under 10 kilometres to go and just really hasn't been headed. Bianca van Woesik did the best she could to hold on to her, but she's just been far too strong today, Joanne Ritchie.
Joanne Ritchie, 31 years of age, a mother of 2.
And the world champion.
She's getting a great reception as she comes down this final stretch now.
There she is. She heads towards the banner. And right on her tail, of course, is her teammate, Terry Smith-Ross, Canadian. She's trying to find a little bit to bridge the gap. I don't know that it's going to work. No, she's backed off her stride. She thinks it's Joanne Ritchie's world championship.
And she's got her hand up. She knows she's won it. Joanne Ritchie from Canada, 1991 World Triathlon champion.
Fine performance. This girl is very happy. This Terry Smith-Ross. And here's Australia's pride. This is Michaela Jones, 3rd place. She'll be absolutely ecstatic with that. Been racing very consistently in America over the last 6 months. Ranked 3 in the world, and here's the men. Where are we in this? We're inside the stadium already. Here's 3 men left in the field. This is going to be exciting. This has come down to the run. The experience of Mike Pigg, the absolute determination of Rick Wells and the youth of Miles Stewart. What are we going? Wells has pulled the sprint. Wells has said, I'm going to go from here. Pigg's gone with him on the shoulder. Pigg's backed a little to get round the corner, and here they come. Miles Stewart doesn't seem to have it. He's not there. Yes, he is. He's right on them now as they head down the straight.
At the moment,
Rick Wells having a look. One more corner to turn. Pigg and Wells come together. Stewart's past them. What a fantastic finish. Miles Stewart looks like he might be the world champion. Rick Wells has got plenty. Has a look at Mike Pigg has gone. Mike Pigg cannot win this race. Miles Stewart, ladies and gentlemen, the champion of the world, this young Australian. They are not going to get to this man. He is pumped up, absolutely pumped up.
And there's nothing in it for 2nd and 3rd.
And look at
Miles
him,
Stewart from
absolutely
Australia, the world champion for 1991.
2 years in a row we've produced the world champion, but no finer effort from this young man. No finer effort will you see in a triathlon course. He has had to run down the recognised best in the world. He's covered him all day. We said it in the call. Mike Pigg, every move he made, Miles Stewart knew exactly where he was.
Well, Harold Robinson came in for 4th, but these men, they put in a dash that was worthy of a 100 or 200 metre final.
And they've been at this for an hour, 48 minutes, and just a few seconds for Miles Stewart to be crowned the world champion. And oh, look at this, what a shame this is. This is Bianca van Woesik. We mentioned during the call the lack of water could pay dividends, and she is really quite out of this event right now. And really, Triathlon Australia officials should be there. She should be now taken from the race. It's a real shame. She's been a fine ambassador for Australia. There he is, the world champion. The world champion. The absolute ecstasy of Miles Stewart in comparison to the agony of Bianca van Woesik, in fact, leading the world championship and now being withdrawn for medical reasons. And unbelievably, a dead heat for 2nd place behind Miles Stewart.
Miles, you couldn't have scripted a better finish than today. Where did you find that extra burst of energy at the end?
I don't know, it hurt. It was really hurting towards the end there, and they got a bit of a gap on me. I kind of let him go because I knew I had much I had left in me and how long I could hold it for, and I actually felt like I went a little bit early there, and lucky enough I had good enough gap to stay in front, but it was hurting at the end.
Well, Rick, any incentive for finishing 2nd rather than 1st from the New Zealand sporting body?
no prizes for second. You know.
Well, that definitely was a dream finish. I mean, having 30,000 people there just screaming their heads off and having 3 guys giving their 100%. That's what athletes look for. Real athletes look for that kind of race. And even though I got second, you know, after I get over the disappointment, it's going to take a while to get over that. It'll be a race that I'll remember for a long time.
What was the secret of your success today?
I think just having fun. I've had a great week here in Australia. I would love to be here longer, so there's no stress. I had fun today.
And 2 children back home will be very proud of their mum when she comes home.
Well, hopefully they're proud. I think maybe in a couple they're a little young to really know what's going on. They just know that Mommy does this crazy biking and running all the time. So hopefully they'll be proud soon.
Congratulations, it was a fantastic performance today.
Thank you very much.
And in the junior divisions, Canadian Eric Millimarkey taking the honours in the men's section in a time of 1 hour, 52 minutes and 30 seconds, 9 seconds clear of Samuel Blattman of Switzerland and 16-year-old Australian Ben Bright. In the women's section, Sonia Krolik of Germany streeted the field, 4 minutes ahead of Australia's Lena Edmondson and Finland's Katarina Ebling. And in one of the biggest tragedies of the days, much like fellow Aussie Bianca von Woesik, Alexandra Laws on target for second place, yet collapsing just before the line with dehydration.